It was supposed to be a normal Sunday lunch, just family around the table, some soft chatter, the kind of afternoon that lets you think everything is mostly okay. Then my mother spoke, and the words landed like a quiet blow. I was sitting between my brother and sister, plates half full, forks resting for a second of pause. Carol, my mother, looked toward the window and said, without a hint of humor, "I only have 2 children." The table froze. Aaron and Mia kept their polite smiles, but their eyes flickered, and the warmth that had been there a second before vanished. It was as if my mother had drawn a line right through our meal, dividing people into who existed and who didn't. Then Lucas, my 7-year-old, looked up from the table and asked in the clearest voice I'd ever heard from anyone that age, "Grandma, then who's the lady in the old photos? The one you hid in the attic?" He sounded calm, curious, rather than accusatory. He was holding a faded photograph and a small piece of cardboard with a handwritten label, the kind of thing he'd found while exploring our attic a few days earlier. For him, this was simple logic. The picture showed someone, the label named someone, and if Mom says she only has 2 children, then who is the person that everything in our house keeps pointing to? Carol's face drained of color, a sudden pallor that made her look years older in a heartbeat. Her hand rose halfway toward her mouth, then fell limply to her lap. Aaron's smile tightened. Mia's eyes darted toward the doorway, as if hope might be out there somewhere. My grandmother, Evelyn, who had been sitting quietly at the end of the table, began to cry. Softly at first, then with small, shaking sobs that broke the silence in the room. Lucas didn't stop. He held the photo up as if presenting evidence for a case that was supposed to be obvious. "She looks like Mom," he said simply, almost a matter-of-fact statement, not a challenge. "The boxes say Sarah 1987. Is that Mom's name?" That second sentence was more than curiosity. It carried a weight I'd never heard from him before. The name on the box matched mine. The year matched the era when I might have been around. For a child, it was a straight line of truth. For everyone else, it exposed a secret that had been tucked away, forgotten or feared, in the attic for decades. I could feel my heart hit my ribs. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Even the sound of silverware against porcelain felt loud. Evelyn continued crying, a slow, trembling sound. The table had food and sunlight and everyday things, but beneath them was a crack that threatened to split everything open. In the space of a few seconds, a hidden story turned into a sudden, undeniable presence. A photograph and a label had become a question that no one could ignore. My mother's statement had been a denial, but Lucas's question pushed reality back into the room with its own quiet force. The hook, this sudden, astonishing moment, worked the way strong openings do in powerful stories. It throws a surprising, emotional statement and a compelling question at once, pulling everyone into wanting to know what will happen next. Writers and storytellers talk about hooks as the part of a story that grabs attention and draws the audience in. A well-crafted hook sets the tone and entices the reader or viewer to stay connected. Babisco. Here, the hook wasn't just a line of dialogue. It was the collision of denial, truth, and the innocence of a child who sees things adults have been hiding. I needed to decide what to do with that moment in the next breath. My son had spoken openly, and my mother's denial echoed flatly in the room as if it had no right to exist anymore. My brother and sister sat in quiet shock, unsure whether to support their mother's claim or protect me, the supposed third child they weren't allowed to acknowledge. My grandmother's tears felt like an answer in themselves, admitting that there had been something very wrong with pretending my existence wasn't real. And Lucas, steady, honest, completely without malice, was the one who had broken the silence. In that slice of time, the normal Sunday lunch turned into the beginning of a reckoning. The question hung between us, heavy and impossible to sweep aside. Who was the woman in the photos? Why had she been hidden? Why was my own name written on those boxes? That is the exact moment the story turns from everyday family scene into a dramatic, emotional mystery. It is the instant when every name, every relationship, every choice made in the past comes rushing back, demanding to be seen. It is the 10 seconds that promise to change everything. I had been looking forward to this Sunday lunch for days, maybe more than I wanted to admit. It was the first time in months that the whole family could gather under one roof without a holiday or birthday forcing the schedule. I imagined the table full of food, laughter that didn't need to hide anything, and my son Lucas running around with the kind of freedom that makes a house feel alive. I wanted a normal afternoon, something ordinary that could remind me life wasn't always so heavy. We were at my mother's house, the one place I still felt tethered to my childhood, even though I lived miles away now. The house still smelled faintly of cinnamon and roasted vegetables, the rinse and repeat scent of a woman who found comfort in cooking for the people she loved. Sunlight poured into the kitchen through a side window, catching the crumbs and dust in the air, making them look like tiny floating stars. The table was the same old wooden one, the one with faded marks from years of homework and family conversations. Plates were stacked, glasses half full with iced tea, bowls of mashed potatoes and green beans scattered along the center. It looked like any other Sunday, and that was why it felt normal enough to fall apart. I sat between my brother Aaron and my sister Mia. Aaron had always been the quiet one, the type who smiled politely and let conversations drift around him, rarely taking a stand. Mia was gentler, always trying to smooth edges, to keep things pleasant. They both faced me with that casual warmth that hides secrets. Across from us, at the head of the table, was our mother, Carol. She wore her usual soft sweater, and the years since our childhood had softened her expressions into something more contemplative. Near her, at the end of the table, sat my grandmother Evelyn. She was older now, hair silvered, movement slower, but still very much present. Her eyes watched everyone as if trying to read more than just faces, perhaps memories, perhaps something deeper beneath our polite chatter. Lucas sat beside me, his legs swinging under the chair. He was excited, humming softly, waiting for the food or for someone to notice him. 7 years old, full of questions, full of belief that if you looked hard enough or asked loud enough, adults would tell you everything. That belief would change the entire room in moments. Before anything else happened, there was that strange, quiet tension that makes people pause even before words land. It wasn't drama in the theatrical sense, just a subtle shift, like the air before a storm. I had felt it before. Sometimes when old family topics were near, sometimes when someone's eyes held more than they would say. I tried to shrug it off, focusing on the warmth in the kitchen, the spoon scooping the last of the gravy, the simple comfort of family together. But I knew, somewhere deep down, that under today's ordinary surface something was waiting. I just didn't know what it was. I allowed myself a small smile toward Lucas. He returned it with hope, and I was suddenly fiercely protective of that hope. I wanted this lunch to be good for him. He deserved to see the family, not just hear about it on a phone call. His world was small and precise. He believed people he loved would always tell him the right thing, and he trusted that the adults around him saw the world clearly. That trust was a fragile, beautiful thing. If anything broke it, I knew it would take a long time to mend. Meanwhile, my mind drifted toward the attic. I'd been there last week, alone, sifting through old boxes. I had found photographs, labels with names and dates. I'd seen my own name written on cardboard that had been put away, forgotten or hidden. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't wanted to disrupt the delicate balance that let us sit here with mashed potatoes and smiles. The attic boxes were heavy, dusty, and full of something that belonged to me, and yet I had kept them secret. I had hoped the secret would stay buried, untouched. Maybe that was the meaning of silent tension. Knowledge held quietly in the corners, refusing to be acknowledged, but refusing to disappear. As we passed the mashed potatoes and began to talk about nothing in particular, I felt my mother's gaze on me. It wasn't a look of pride or affection. It was something like calculation or hesitation, an uneasy awareness that someone was closer than she wanted. I shifted in my seat, trying to keep my face neutral, my thoughts tucked away. I didn't want to be the one to stir old dust. I wanted to be the daughter who smiled, the sister who nodded, the mother who let her son enjoy a peaceful Sunday. Evelyn watched quietly. Her hands lay folded in her lap. You could see the weight of years in her eyes. She wasn't saying anything, but her silence carried the same tension I felt. Whatever had been held for so long was now hovering near the surface. It was like everyone knew a storm was coming, and yet none of us spoke about it out loud. The silence was shared, thick and almost a character in itself at the table. That afternoon, in those early moments before the conflict erupted, the family was a fragile picture of togetherness. Warm, familiar, but with a crack running quietly through it. Each person sat with unseen thoughts, with histories and choices that had never been fully explained. And in the middle of it all, Lucas hummed, totally unaware that the question in his mind would cut deeper than any of us expected. The hum of Lucas's quiet song faded into the air, replaced by an uneasy stillness that felt heavier than silence. No one reached for more food. No one tried to laugh. The table had shifted from safe routine into a tight, waiting moment. My mother's face was the first to show it. She sat very still, hands pressed to her lap. Her mouth was closed, but her breath was shallow. Her color had drained completely, leaving her skin almost the same pale shade as the tablecloth. For a heartbeat, I thought she might stand and walk away, or say something to diffuse the awkwardness. Instead, she simply stared at Lucas's small hand holding the photograph. Aaron looked at me, then at Mia. His polite smile vanished. He kept his hands folded, knuckles white against his napkin. Mia's eyes flicked toward the kitchen door as though searching for anyone who might say the right thing and rescue us from what had just been named. Both of them were quiet, their silence almost louder than words. The tension wasn't theatrical. It was the kind that lives naturally in rooms where secrets have been held too long, a pressure that makes people avoid breathing too loudly. Evelyn began to cry more clearly now. The sound was steady and low, not loud or dramatic, but it grew like a small leak, turning into a steady drip. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. I could hear the faint rasp of her breath, each exhale a surrender. Her tears didn't stop the awkwardness. They made it more real. They confirmed that something was wrong, that this question Lucas had asked was not just curious, but dangerous to the equilibrium everyone had built. Lucas didn't back down. He kept the photograph at chest height, looking straight at Carol. His voice remained calm. Without anger or accusation, only earnest demand for clarity. It was as if he knew that asking meant a responsibility to listen. "She looks like Mom," he said again, his finger lightly touching the edge of the photo. "The boxes say, Sarah, 1987. Is that Mom's name?" Every time he spoke, the tension tightened. The words formed a line cutting through the room. It was not a shout. It was a clear, simple statement that left no room for nonsense. I felt my own heart quicken. I knew exactly what he meant, and I knew that the consequences of answering or not answering would ripple far beyond this afternoon. Carol finally forced a smile, but it was thin and trembling. She said quietly, "Let's not make a big deal about old photos." Her words tried to push away the question, but they landed on the table like a stone thrown in still water. The ripples couldn't be stopped. The air remained charged. Aaron shifted but did not speak. Mia's lips were pressed together so hard I could see the tension in her jaw. I saw her eyes well up slightly, but she blinked hard, trying to compose herself. I felt both sides of myself pull in different directions. Part of me wanted to protect Lucas from whatever this secret was. I wanted to take his hand, stand up, and say we should leave. Another part felt the raw sting of denial. My mother was effectively erasing me, declaring that she had only 2 children. The very idea that my existence could be dismissed in a sentence was unbearable. I had spent years unsure whether to demand recognition, and now Lucas had given me the courage without meaning to. My voice came out steady but firm. "Mom," I asked, "why were the photos hidden? Who was in them?" The room held its breath. I felt Lucas squeeze my hand beneath the table. His calmness steadied me. I looked at Carol and saw more than fear. I saw nearly everything she had been holding back for decades, now teetering on the rim of exposure. She swallowed hard, lips trembling, eyes not meeting mine. The silent tension deepened because everyone knew this moment could break something precious, or finally open it. Aaron spoke first in a low voice, not looking at either of us. "Lucas, let it go. It is not a good topic to discuss now." His words were a plea to restore silence, to bury the line Lucas had drawn in the conversation. For him, keeping peace mattered. For me, peace built on denial was no peace at all. Mia nodded once, small and quick, as if to agree, and yet I could see the battle inside her. Evelyn lifted her head, wiping her eyes. Her voice, when she spoke, was thin, barely above a whisper. It sounded like it had been stuck in her throat for years, finally pushed out by the pressure building at the table. She said, "Your mother said what she said, but we all know there was always more. We just never had the courage to say it." That admission shifted everything. It was not a confession, but it admitted the existence of a truth that everyone had been pretending did not exist. The tension rose a notch higher. Now the person who had been silent longest had spoken, and her words carried the weight of decades. I watched Carol's face. Tears glistened in her eyes. She shook her head once, slowly, as if to deny the sudden reality. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper so small it nearly disappeared. "It's not that simple," she said. "It was never supposed to be like this." Those words, soft as they were, landed loudly. They hinted at something complicated, something that had chosen silence over explanation long ago. The tension in the room curdled into something almost visible, like a dark cloud that had slowly formed behind the sun. The conflict was now clearly defined. A child's question had thrust a hidden truth into the middle of a family meal. One person denied, another tried to silence. A third admitted quietly, and the rest held the fragile balance between them. Each breath could break it or push it further. The rising tension was not only dramatic, it was real. It grew because everyone was suddenly forced to decide whether to protect an illusion or confront reality. In storytelling terms, this is the heart of rising action, the sequence of events where conflict escalates, suspenses deepen, stakes rise, and characters are forced to reveal their true selves. That build leads the audience toward the turning point or climax, making them more invested in what comes next. Studio binder, and in that kitchen, as the sun moved slowly across the window, the family sat rigid, each of us aware that the next word spoken would determine what happened to the fragile world we had built. The moment my mother whispered, "It's not that simple," something inside me shifted. The room was still heavy with silence, but beneath that silence was a pulsing truth that refused to stay buried. Lucas kept his hand in mine, and his steady presence grounded me. It was as if his innocence gave me permission to stop tiptoeing around the things that had never made sense. I looked around the table, at my mother's trembling lips, at Aaron's stiff shoulders, at Mia blinking fast as if trying to hold back tears, at my grandmother wiping her face with shaking hands. The whole family sat in a suspended moment, the kind that demands someone to act. And suddenly, I knew it had to be me. The years of confusion, missing pieces, strange memories, and the quiet ache I'd carried since childhood, it all pushed forward at once. I took a breath and said, "We can't keep pretending nothing is wrong." My voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of every silent question I'd held inside me. If there's something we're not saying, then we need to say it now. Carol shook her head, eyes glistening. "Sarah, please don't start this." Lucas straightened in his seat. "But Grandma," he said gently, "the boxes have Mom's name, and the pictures look like her. Why were they hidden?" His question wasn't an attack. It was a simple truth spoken by a child who wasn't afraid of the consequences, and that truth gave me the final push I needed. I stood up from my chair, the legs scraping softly against the floor. It wasn't a dramatic rise. It was steady, deliberate, the kind of movement that says, "I won't sit quietly anymore. I'm going to the attic," I said. Aaron looked up sharply. "Sarah, don't." "Why not?" I asked. "What are we trying to protect? A lie? A photo? A story that doesn't make sense?" Mia reached for my arm, her voice trembling. "Please don't make this worse. You don't know what you're opening." "Maybe it's time I found out," I said. My mother rose from her seat as if pulled by invisible strings. She moved quickly, blocking my path, her eyes wide and desperate. "Leave it alone," she pleaded. "There's no reason to dig up the past." Her voice cracked in a way I had never heard. Not angry, terrified. Lucas held the photograph in both hands now, gripping it like it mattered more than anything. He climbed down from his chair and walked toward me. "I'll go with you, Mom," he said softly. That small sentence changed everything. The idea of my son accompanying me, of him seeing whatever truth had been buried for so long, made the fear inside me sharpen, but it also lit a spark. I refused to let him grow up believing that silence was safer than truth. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to come," I told him. He looked up at me with steady eyes. "I want to know who she is." Behind us, Evelyn spoke through her tears. "Let her go, Carol." The way she said it wasn't a suggestion. It was an exhausted order from someone who had spent years watching the truth smother itself. Carol flinched, tears finally spilling. "Mom, don't start." "I should have started years ago," Evelyn whispered. My grandmother's voice carried more strength in that moment than I'd heard from her in a long time. Her words gave me a strange sense of permission to step into the attic, permission to break open whatever story had been locked away. I moved past Carol before she could stop me again, my hand squeezing Lucas's gently as we walked toward the hallway. The house felt different as we moved. Every step up the staircase seemed to echo louder than it should. The walls, the carpet, the framed family pictures lining the hall, all of it felt like a set of silent witnesses. Behind us, the sounds of the dining room changed. A chair scraped. Someone sobbed softly. Someone whispered something I couldn't make out. The family wasn't just watching. They were bracing. At the attic door, I placed my hand on the knob. I felt Lucas beside me, steady and brave in a way that made me proud and terrified at the same time. "Are you ready?" I asked him. He nodded, and in that instant, with my hand on the door and my son at my side, I knew the turning point was real. Whether the truth healed us or shattered us, we would no longer live in the shadows of secrets someone else chose to keep. This was the moment I decided to face the past, no matter how painful it might be. This was the moment everything began to change. The attic door creaked open in a way that made the house feel older, more aware of what we were about to uncover. The wooden steps folded down and cool air drifted from above, carrying the familiar smell of dust, cardboard, and time. Lucas tightened his grip on the photograph, but his expression stayed steady. He wasn't scared. He was focused. Somehow that made me braver. We climbed the steps slowly, our hands brushing the railing that had splinters worn smooth from years of use. The attic was dim, lit only by a small bulb hanging from a frayed cord. Its warm glow fell onto stacks of boxes, old trunks, and rows of forgotten belongings. The air felt thick with a history that had been stored away too neatly. Lucas pointed. "There," he whispered, though there was no real need to be quiet. The boxes were right where he had found them before, 3 large cardboard containers stacked against the back wall. Faded handwriting marked them: Sarah, 1987, Sarah, early years, and S. Harper. Seeing my name written so clearly in ink that had faded but not disappeared sent a sharp ache through my chest. These weren't random boxes. These weren't mislabeled items. Someone had chosen to write my name, my year, my identity on them, and then bury them up here as if the truth were something to archive instead of acknowledge. Lucas kneeled beside the first box. "Can I open it?" he asked. His voice was respectful but filled with anticipation. I nodded, kneeling beside him. "We'll open it together." We lifted the lid. Dust swirled upward like tiny ghosts, and beneath it all lay stacks of photographs, old report cards, drawings in crayon, and a baby blanket folded neatly on top. Lucas reached out and touched the blanket first, his small fingers brushing the soft, worn material. "Is this yours?" I picked it up. My throat tightened. The fabric was familiar, faintly scented with something comforting, something from long ago. "Yes," I said softly. "It was mine when I was little." Next came the photographs. Lucas lifted them gently, passing each one to me. The first showed a toddler, me, held in my mother's arms. Carol looked younger, smiling in a way she seldom did now. The next photo showed me standing between Aaron and Mia, the 3 of us grinning with childish innocence, unaware of anything resembling a family secret. Each picture was a piece of proof. Proof that I existed in this family, not as a shadow, not as a mistake, not as something that could be edited out with a single Sunday sentence. As we sorted through the box, footsteps creaked on the attic steps. Carol appeared first, her face streaked with tears. Evelyn followed, leaning heavily against Aaron, while Mia stood behind them, her expression tense but open. They gathered in the attic like witnesses called to a truth they could no longer deny. Carol's eyes landed on the blanket in my lap, then on the photographs scattered across the floor. Her breath hitched. She covered her mouth with shaking fingers. "I didn't want you to find these," she whispered. I looked up at her. "Why?" She lowered herself to the floor, sitting across from me, her hands trembling. "Because everything changed after—" Her voice cracked, and she pressed her palms against her knees as if trying to keep herself together. "After your father left, I didn't know how to manage all of it. There was pressure from his side of the family, pressure from mine, and I made decisions I thought would protect everyone." "By erasing me?" I asked quietly. Her eyes filled. "No. I was trying to protect you from the shame, from the rumors, from everything that came after he disappeared. But the more time passed, the harder it became to fix it. Eventually, pretending became easier than explaining." Evelyn shook her head, tears spilling again. "I begged her to tell you. She thought she had more time. She always thought next year, next month, next week, she'd finally explain. But time kept moving, and excuses kept piling up." I held one of the photos up. Me on my 5th birthday, blowing out candles. "This is not something to hide," I said. "This is my life, my name, my place in this family." Lucas slid his hand into mine, anchoring me in that moment. Carol looked at him, and something in her expression broke. "I never wanted him to hear it like this," she whispered. "I never wanted any of this to hurt you. I convinced myself that avoiding the truth was the same as protecting you. It wasn't," I said softly. "It hurt more." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I should have told you years ago." The attic was silent except for the sound of her crying. Around us lay the pieces of a life hidden away. Photos, blankets, drawings, proof that the truth had always been here, waiting. And now it was open, undeniable, and finally spoken aloud. This was the moment the family story cracked wide open, not with anger or shouting, but with raw confession and the fragile truth that had waited too long to be acknowledged. The climax wasn't loud, it was human, it was painful, and it was real. The attic felt different once the truth settled into the open. The dust in the air didn't seem as heavy. The boxes didn't feel as threatening. The secrets inside them no longer held the same power they had moments earlier. It was as if the room itself had exhaled, relieved that we had finally stopped pretending. But the people in the attic were not relieved. Not yet. We were suspended in the rawness of what had just been revealed. Carol sat on the wooden floor, her back slightly hunched, her hands resting in her lap. For once she wasn't trying to maintain control or preserve an image. She looked human. Small, wounded, unsure of how to fix what she had created. Her eyes stayed on Lucas, who quietly held the blanket and a photograph as if he understood the gravity of what he carried. "I'm sorry," she said again, but her voice wasn't pleading this time. It was resigned, almost hollow. "I thought I was doing what was best. I was wrong. For years, I had imagined what this moment might feel like, finding out why things never felt aligned, why certain memories felt incomplete, why I sensed a distance that had no clear cause. I imagined anger, shouting, accusations thrown like sharp objects. But standing there, surrounded by photographs of myself as a child, I didn't feel the rage I expected. What washed over me instead was a mixture of sadness and clarity. Sadness for the years that were lost, clarity for finally knowing the truth behind the silence. I sat on the floor across from her, letting the soft attic light fall between us. "You didn't erase the past," I said quietly. "You just hid it. And hiding something doesn't make it go away. It only makes it hurt more when it finally surfaces." Carol nodded slowly, absorbing each word. "I know, and I can't undo it. I can only try to rebuild whatever I broke." Evelyn shifted beside Aaron, wiping her cheeks with the corner of her sleeve. Her voice was faint but steady as she spoke. "You were always part of this family, Sarah. We just failed you by staying quiet. That silence should have ended years ago." She looked down at her trembling hands. "You deserved better from all of us." Lucas scooted closer to me, leaning gently against my arm. His presence grounded every emotion rushing through me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," I told him softly, "for asking the question no one else would." He looked up at me, confused. but I just wanted to know who she was. That simple truth broke something deep inside me. It reminded me that children see clearly. Without the layers of fear or shame, adults pile on top of reality. He hadn't meant to expose anything. He just wanted answers. And in doing so, he forced all of us to confront what had been avoided for decades. As we gathered the photos and placed them back into the box, carefully this time, respectfully, I felt a shift in the room. Not forgiveness, not resolution, but the beginning of something new. A crack in the ice. A place where healing could seep in if we let it. Aaron stepped forward, his voice low. We should have said something sooner. We saw things didn't feel equal, and we didn't push back. We thought Mom had her reasons. But that doesn't excuse us. Mia nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I'm sorry, really sorry. I didn't know how to question what Mom told us, but I should have. Their apologies were imperfect, but they were honest. I accepted them with a small nod, even if the hurt wouldn't disappear overnight. Healing would take time. Trust would take longer. But we were finally in a place where honesty could breathe. We descended the attic stairs as a group. The living room felt strangely different now, lighter almost. The sun had shifted in the sky, casting warm rays across the floor like an invitation to step forward instead of looking back. Carol approached me once more. I know saying sorry isn't enough. I want to make it right. I want people to know the truth. I want you to have the place you always should have had. Her voice wavered. If you'll let me try. I looked at her, really looked at her, not as the mother who hid me, not as the woman who denied me, but as someone who had finally admitted the truth after years of avoiding it. Trying is a start, I said quietly. But trust isn't rebuilt in one day, and that's okay. We'll take it one step at a time. Lucas tugged at my hand. Does this mean Grandma has 3 kids now? He asked. For the first time that day, Carol managed a fragile, genuine smile. Yes, she whispered. I have 3. Standing in the warm, shifting light of the living room, I felt something settle inside me. Not complete peace, but something close enough to breathe again. My identity wasn't lost and it wasn't erased. It was here, in old photographs, in handwritten labels, in quiet confessions, in the courage of a child. This was the start of a new story, one built on truth, not silence. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. In the days that followed, nothing felt the same, yet everything finally made sense. The truth didn't fix the years we lost, but it gave us something we'd never had before: honesty. Lucas continued asking small questions, the kind children ask when they trust the world to give straight answers. And this time, the answers came freely. No more whispers, no more hidden boxes, no more pretending. My mother and I talked more in a week than we had in years. Some conversations were painful, some were quiet, some were filled with apologies she had kept buried just like the attic boxes. It wasn't easy. Healing rarely is. But step by step, the distance between us grew smaller, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a daughter who was no longer erased from her own story. I learned something important through all of this. Silence doesn't heal anything. Only truth does. Even when the truth shakes a family to its core, it gives everyone a chance to rebuild with stronger foundations. And sometimes, the bravest person in the room is the smallest one, holding a photograph and asking a question no one else is willing to ask. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched you, helped you, or kept you watching all the way to the end, please like the video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this. Your support means everything, and it helps these stories reach more people who might need them. I'll see you in the next one.